What do y'all think about Doge? They found that they finding
That's
a
a
lot
joke.
of waste so far.
That's
They've been doing that.
that whole department is garbage.
Like
You
the
think
whole
so?
NSA that they fired and had to rehire because they figure, oh shit, these people like help us
Are
keep our
necessary,
our country safe
right?
and monitor the
Well, no,
nuclear devices.
I was talking about they found in the entitlement programs, they found some people are getting Social Security payments in there 150. So they found a lot of money there. They
I
also
mean, that's
found
fine, but they didn't have to. They didn't have to put Elon Musk and his weird ass in charge of a department that ain't even part of the government.
Exactly.
And he needs to go. Just like his son said in the press conference today, "You are not the president. You need to sit down."
well, let me ask y'all a question. If they find just this, right now there's some findings. They say they found some stuff. If they find some stuff and they find more waste, is the problem the person who's finding it, or the problem is, or would you still have a problem with if we saw legitimate waste? Like, is it just the person who's finding it that's the issue? Is that
Uh,
y'all would say?
I think the
Primarily.
legitimate waste he's finding is not outweighing the chaos that they're causing on other levels with other decisions that are being made. If he truly was doing the job of eliminating government waste, that'd be great, whether he's Republican or Democrat. But it's like they're doing that, which could be a good thing if it's really waste. But then there's so many other things that's happening that's going to just really wreak chaos in our country that it's not worth it at all.
Exactly.
I mean, I'm definitely against government waste, especially if they're finding money that could really go to, you know, people who really need it. But
Right now they said
a,
they found 200 billion.
I really, but what's going to happen to that money though? You know what I mean? I don't think that it's going to go where it's really needed. It's going to go to enrich those who are already rich into other programs that we really don't need. Um,
Yep, that's the
and
truth.
I just
I think that's a
I think
narrative
it's a
though.
no. I think it's a twofold thing. I think it's important that the waste is being found, but it's also important who's finding it too. Because when you have a greedy, power hungry, dictator minded person finding the money, of course they're going to find selfish things to do with it.
I
It's
mean,
not going to go to benefit those who really need the money.
I understand that. I understand that that's right now we in the information war, so I'm just kind of peeping both sides of it because I feel like that's where I think the Democrats are really scared of that or they're pushing that narrative, but at the same time, I'm thinking like I look at it, I say Elon Musk is worth $350 billion. So he's the richest guy in the world. So uh, I don't know if the narrative is. I don't know if it's makes sense for him trying to steal money at this point.
Why wouldn't it?
Um. So,
It's not about personal wealth. It's about power.
but he
And when
already
you
has
feel like
power.
you can, yeah, but you can always gain more, especially if you are working on behalf of the U.S. government, or if you've been authorized to do things on behalf of the U.S. government. Now you get a different type of power. Now you have the ability to allocate that to other groups or entities that you feel are going to further your cause or support your cause.
Well, I feel like
They're
I'll
they're
say
trying
this
to
and then
get rid of they're
I'll
trying to get
back
rid of
off.
important programs like Social Security, right, or Medicaid. So
I
Yeah.
mean,
if they're trying to get rid of programs like that, do you really think that money is going to go into helping people who are in desperate need of those programs?
Well, the narrative is that, or the premise is that they are finding the waste to just eliminate the payout because it's all tax money being paid out. So there is a lot of fraud in Medicare. There's a lot of fraud in Medicare. There's a lot of fraud in Social Security. There's a lot of fraud in the PPP loans. We know that for sure.
Okay,
So
but what are you going to replace that with?
no, they're not getting rid of the program. So I think that's something that is kind of um, a misconception. What they're doing is they're going in from what I saw, because I kind of listened to the whole press conference a couple days ago. They're going in certain programs. They're focusing on the entitlement programs, I guess, right now, and they're finding places where there is either fraud or mismanagement. So what they were saying is that within Social Security there's a lot of people who are Social Security fraud. So there's people who are receiving payments who are their age is way past someone who would be living. So what they were saying is that there's a lot of fraud in the sense of people getting paid out who aren't real people. And they were saying that a lot of
That's
the
been going on for centuries. I mean, for probably as long as Social Security has existed.
well,
It's not
that's why I'm
new.
saying I said it's interesting because it seems like what they're doing is something kind of different than any other government ever, any other administration ever. Because what they were saying is like a lot of the treasury payments that are going out, they're not coded, so they don't have the correct coding. So I think I'll just say this. From what I heard through the press conference, there's a lot of we have some kind of antiquated systems that could be fixed from a tech perspective. Things that you would do in the private sector that's not done in the federal space. So they're kind of focusing on inefficiencies. So I thought it was interesting to say the least. I'll just say that.
I mean, I think it's a crying shame that they would have someone that's not even cleared from a security perspective, and he has millions of federal dollars in contracts. I mean, it's a conflict of interest. He shouldn't have access to any type of Treasury Department payment system. He shouldn't have access to anything. I mean, and the fact that they're just breaking the law is ridiculous. So I don't support anything Elon Musk is doing.
I could feel that.
Period.
On top of the fact that you can't trust that what they're saying is the truth. Like
Yeah.
these numbers they're putting out there saying that there's fraudulent activity, which I'm sure there is a modicum of activity that is false or fake. But to the degree that he's saying, I don't know. This administration has a flair for exaggerating things. So before I would even accept any information they're giving or any reports, I'd want to get proof that what they're saying is actually true.
I would have to agree with you because they're trying to say that they've already saved $1 billion in canceling diversity, equity, and inclusion contracts. But I mean, show us some proof. I just don't trust them. Period.
Uh-huh. Show me the data.
Uh,
Yeah.
I think to answer your question, Owusu, I think people are having a problem. Sadly, I think most of us are having more of the problem because of who's in office, as well as Elon Musk. Um, do I like everything that's going on right now? Absolutely not. But I'm not sure. I think some of us are of the mindset that they can do nothing right. So everything they do is going to be wrong.
Well, it goes both ways.
That's
And
kind of
and
what I'm
and
getting at too. Yeah.
right, right. So the problem with that,
Okay.
what I try to get everybody to look at is I look at the duopoly as a collective, as a one unit and two different wings, as part of the same bird. I knew back when I was in the military in the 80s that um, we were wasting money back then. Talking about $100 pens and $500 toilet seat, whatever nonsense we were talking about. We knew it was ridiculous spending. And then where I was with my department, I know by the end of the quarter, we had to spend all the money, or we were told to spend it all.
Sure.
You know, and so there is certainly a lot of waste in our government. My thing is, it just seems like most of us not talking about this space here, but period, the conversations online, are more upset with the auditor, than what the auditor has found.
Right.
And I'm sitting here like, we can have our feelings about Elon Musk. I have a problem with, and when I did the radio show back in the day, I spoke about our, I named 50 companies that our government is giving 50 of, the most profitable companies that our government is giving tax-free giving money to still. And I'm like, what are we giving the money for?
Right.
And we already know our government gives a lot of these pharmaceutical companies for R&D,
Sure.
and we get no percentage of the results of when they sell their. So there's
Absolutely.
a lot of waste. And my thing is, that's why one thing I know for sure, that we have the means to have universal health care
Right.
without it costing us a dime more. We have the money there.
Right.
Having the person in there to get in, take the money, was like, all right, this is a waste, this is a waste. Let's reallocate that and put it in places where we actually would benefit the masses. That I'm for.
Right.
I think we're really, generally speaking, most of us are upset that Trump is doing this, as opposed to, my thing is, why didn't we do this a long time ago? We should have long been having on public display all these frivolous, ridiculous spendings with our money. You know, we were just talking about some of it last week with, we have money for things in a zero point 0.5 seconds. We
Right.
want to go to war.
Right.
We got the money for it. We never, I mean, what's his name? It's been, from Bob Marley and Marvin Gaye talks about this, had songs about the fact that we always had money for war
Yeah.
and can't feed the poor.
Right.
Um, we have money for, out of nowhere. We can house illegal immigrants, but we don't, we don't have the money to house our own
Right.
citizens. I mean,
Right.
it's asinine to me. My thing is, let's be angry, but let's be consistent about it. We should be upset with our government as a whole, as it comes to how they are mismanaging our money, and how they're not using our money to benefit we the people.
But I think the problem with that though, Ian, is that it's the branding, and that's what I said too. It's not so much about liking. I agree with you. It's not so much about liking who's doing it, but like I said, I would say at minimum, it's at least interesting what they're finding. Even if you don't agree with the person, it's at least interesting, because I do see a lot of people who are like, I don't really care what they find, and because they've done this or done that. So I think, just as far as the political spectrum, I think that what I'm worried about for the Democrats, I don't identify as either one, but I'm worried about the Democrats, because if they legitimately find something and are able to spell it out, which they seem to be doing, and they're able to actually use real numbers and show you, because I listened to the press conference, and when they talked about the specific programs, the specific numbers, he's using tech guys, so they're not going to come with some ambiguous reports. And I do understand, Vina, to your point. I mean, the argument could be, say, you know what, I don't believe it, but that's going to be a tough road for the Democrats in 4 years. If they're able to legitimately show, hey, we saved money, American people, or at least a certain number of American people, are going to say, you know what, hmm, how come the previous administrations never did this? So it looks like they're doing something new and innovative in a different way. And I think it's going to be hard, as much as some people don't like Elon Musk, it's going to be hard to refute actual numbers they're finding of waste. So one person that's really spoken out, and obviously I reference her because she's a sister, Jasmine Crockett. So
Right.
she's like kind of the top Democratic person right now online. And I watched her when they had the congressional hearing last week. And to your point, Ian, the first thing she talked about, she said, rather than focusing on that, we should be talking about defense spending, which is like 50% of the discretionary fund.
Right.
But I said, well, okay, that's a point. But two things. One, United States has always been a military heavy country as far as spending. We always have, always probably will. And then the second point was that, okay, so you could say, you know what, why focus on this when we should focus on this bigger amount? And my parallel was like, if you went to a private company, if you was to go there and try to make their company more efficient, and you said, okay, we're going to cut spending, the first place they would look, let's say the marketing budget was 50% of what they spent, they wouldn't go to marketing first. They're going to go to the payroll, and they're going to say, you got three managers here, you only need one in that department, cut two. And cut those salaries. Both of them are making 100 grand a year. That's 200,000 a year. So that's kind of how I looked at it. Is that when they go to look at it, they're kind of going to look at. And I'm not saying whether it's right or wrong. I'm just saying it's just an interesting.
You have a feedback.
Okay.
At least I'm hearing you. Is anybody else hearing
Yeah,
you?
I can hear it. Is that you, twin?
Um, it could be me. It could be me. Let me get off and go back on.
Okay. So I was just saying that's an interesting thing because it's going to be hard to look at it and say, you know what, waste is still waste, even if they're looking at 5% of the waste. It's going to be a tough. So I thought it was interesting. So I think that people, is particularly on the Democratic side, should. I think there's a little fear there. And that's just my opinion. I think there's some fear that they're finding stuff, and it's going to be tough to debate against that when they go to run again, because like, what are you going to run on? You know what I'm saying? So right now, and again, I'm just making observations right now. Although we talked about immigration last week, they're decreasing the border. No one's coming over anymore, so they've decreased border crossings by like 90%. And then they're also going and looking at the spending. And Trump is like, well, I actually ran on that. I said I was going to do it, and that's what we were going to do. So I just think it's an interesting time because I think the information war is so interesting and the narratives are interesting. So that's just my little.
Yeah, and there's a lot of fake information out there too.
Sure.
Like I saw information about Chelsea Clinton, and I debunked that whole thing that she received $84 million or something like that. I debunked that one, and then there was another one.
There's one about
There was
Malia
another one.
too, receiving U.S. aid, like $2 million.
Right
They said who? They
now,
said who? Obama?
Malia.
Malia?
now, now there was times when, and like I'm not a fan of the Clintons at all. Zero love for them. When Haiti had their earthquake, they had IHRC, and they essentially a lot of money that was funneling through that non-for-profit to help the country. They were basically helping a lot of vulture capitalists.
Mm-hmm.
They were forced migrating people into another area. Vulture capitalists purchasing parts of Haiti, and then building and inflating pretty much what Trump is doing or wants to do with Gaza. Um, similarly, what they did there, they had um, they had other things that was associated with sweatshops and things of that. And it was a whole lot of mess with IHRC. I don't recall verbatim, but
This is
Yeah, what's the
making
there's
a very depressing Valentine's relationship podcast, if I say so myself. We went
okay.
Can
Yeah,
we
let's have
shift?
All
that.
right,
Let's have
Ian.
that.
I'm
Time to
sorry,
shift.
brother. You
politics
know
and
what?
sweatshops. That's exactly what every couple wants to talk about